Before we go any further, I want to welcome every single one of you to this channel. This is Shadow Warefare. This is not a motivational channel. This is not a feel-good channel. This is a spiritual battleground where we expose hidden systems, confront unseen forces, and declare truth without fear. On this channel, we don't just talk about problems, we confront roots. We don't just describe struggles, we wage war against them in the spirit. If you are here, it's not by accident. You are led here because something in your life refuses to stay broken, and today's message is going to explain why. Today we are dealing with a question many people are afraid to ask out loud. Why does poverty seem spiritual? Why does it cling to families for generations? Why do some people work endlessly and still remain stuck, while others rise with ease? And most importantly, why does poverty begin to break when certain psalms are declared out loud with understanding and authority? Stay with me, because if you listen casually, you'll miss it. But if you listen spiritually, something will shift. Let me hook you with this truth. Poverty is not only a lack of money. Poverty is a system. Poverty is a mindset. Poverty is a spiritual atmosphere that feeds on silence, ignorance, and hopelessness. And that is exactly why the book of Psalms terrifies it. Many people read Psalms like poetry. Heaven hears Psalms like warfare. When a believer opens their mouth and declares certain Psalms, they are not reciting words. They are activating anciently overwide invisible restrictions. This is why generations before us survived famine, slavery, exile, and war with Psalms on their lips. Not because Psalms sound nice, but because Psalms shift realms. Poverty hates sound. Poverty hates declaration. Poverty survives where people whisper prayers, but never speak with authority. Now let me say something that might shake you. Poverty does not always enter a life through laziness. Sometimes it enters through bloodlines. Sometimes it enters through trauma. Sometimes it enters through vows spoken in pain. Sometimes it enters through injustice that was never spiritually challenged. And when poverty enters that way, it doesn't leave through effort alone. It leaves through spiritual confrontation. This is where Psalms come in. The Psalms are not random songs. They are legal documents written by men who understood covenant authority and divine justice. David was not just a shepherd, he was a king who understood how to speak to God in a way that moved heaven and shook earth. When David spoke, he wasn't begging, he was reminding God of covenant. And poverty breaks when covenant is remembered. There are psalms that speak directly to provision, justice, inheritance, and divine reversal. When these psalms are declared, they expose false claims on a person's life. Poverty often survives because it has a voice saying, "This is how it has always been." Psalms answer back and say, "This is what the Lord has sworn." Listen closely. Silence never broke poverty. Complaining never broke poverty. Fear never broke poverty. But declaration, aligned with truth, has broken poverty again and again throughout history. When you declare psalms, you are doing three things at the same time, whether you realize it or not. You are reminding heaven of God's promises. You are reminding yourself of your identity. And you are warning unseen forces that their time is limited. That's why poverty reacts when psalms are spoken out loud. Take this truth into your spirit. The enemy does not fear silent thoughts. He fears spoken alignment. Words carry jurisdiction. Spoken words activate laws. This is why Scripture says life and death are in the power of the tongue, not the power of intention. Many believers pray silently and wonder why nothing shifts. Meanwhile, psalms were designed to be spoken, sung, shouted, and declared. They were battlefield songs. Poverty thrives in environments where people no longer expect change. Psalms restore expectation. They remind the soul that God is not literal about lack, injustice, or oppression. When Psalm 23 is declared, poverty hears, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And that sentence alone challenges the right of lack to remain. When Psalm 24 is declared, it announces that the earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord, not to systems designed to starve you. When Psalm 34 is declared, it reminds the poor that the Lord hears their cry and delivers them from all their troubles. Not some of them, all of them. This is not symbolism. This is spiritual legislation, comfortable where people see themselves as victims. Psalms reframe identity. They move a person from beggar mentality to covenant mentality. They teach the soul how to speak to God without shame. And here is where many people miss it. Declaring psalms is not magic, it is alignment. It only works when the heart believes what the mouth speaks. This is why repetition without revelation produces frustration. But declaration with understanding produces breakthrough. Some of you listening right now have prayed hard but never declared boldly. You asked God to provide but never confronted the spirit of lack. Psalms do that confrontation for you. Let me tell you something heavy. Poverty often stays because no one ever officially challenged it. It moved into the family quietly and was never served an eviction notice. Psalms are eviction notices. When Psalm 112 is declared, it announces that wealth and riches are in the house of the righteous, and that sentence alone destabilizes generational narratives of struggle. When Psalm 37 is declared, it confronts injustice, delayed reward, and stolen inheritance. These psalms don't flatter reality, they correct it. This is why people testify that something shifts when they start declaring psalms daily. Doors open. Ideas come, help appears, strength returns, not because money falls from the sky, but because alignment changes decisions, courage, timing, and favor. Poverty breaks when the inner world changes first. Psalms rebuild the inner world. And listen, this is important, declaring psalms is not about volume, it's about authority. You don't need to scream, you need to know. When you know who you are speaking to and what covenant you stand in, even a calm declaration shakes chains. Some of you are about to realize that poverty didn't just attack your finances. It attacked your voice. It made you quiet. It made you grateful for crumbs. Psalms restore your voice. This is why the enemy fights consistency. Because psalms declared once encourage, but psalms declared consistently reprogram the atmosphere. If you're still listening, it means something in you is waking up. And in the next part, I'm going to go deeper into specific patterns, spiritual resistance, and how certain psalms dismantle them piece by piece, including why poverty often resists right before it breaks. Stay connected to Shadow Warefare. This is not content, this is confrontation. Now let me take you further, because this is where many people misunderstand what is really happening when psalms are declared and why poverty begins to react before it breaks. You see, poverty does not leave quietly. It resists exposure, it resists light, and the moment you begin to declare psalms consistently, something unseen starts shifting, and that shift creates pressure. Pressure always reveals what was hidden. This is why some people say, I started praying more and things felt harder. It's not that prayer caused the resistance. It's that prayer exposed it. Psalms especially do not comfort systems of darkness. They confront them. When psalms are declared, they force poverty to reveal its roots, its alliances, and its legal excuses. And poverty always operates with excuses. One of its favorite excuses is delay. It whispers, not now, later, maybe next year. Psalms collapse delay by declaring divine timing. When Psalm 102 speaks of an appointed time for favor, it doesn't announce a deadline. Poverty hates deadlines. Another excuse poverty uses is comparison. It convinces you that your struggle is normal because others struggle too. Psalms destroy comparison by restoring personal covenant. They remind you that God deals with individuals, not averages. Now hear this carefully. Poverty is sustained by agreement. Not always conscious agreement, but agreement nonetheless. Agreement with fear. Agreement with limitation. Agreement with statements like, this is just how life is. Psalms break agreement because they introduce a higher voice into the conversation. When you declare a psalm, you are allowing God's voice to interrupt your internal dialogue. And interruption is dangerous to poverty. This is why psalms were sung in times of siege, exile, and captivity. They kept people from mentally surrendering before physically. Poverty often wins mentally long before it wins materially. Psalms reverse that order. Let me say something that might unsettle you but will free you if you catch it. Poverty doesn't just take money, It drains imagination. It narrows vision. It trains people to think in survival mode only. Psalms restore imagination by reminding the soul that God is creative, abundant, and intentional. When Psalm 65 speaks of God crowning the year with goodness and paths dripping with abundance, it expands the mind beyond scarcity thinking. When Psalm 66 speaks of passing through fire and water, it reframes suffering as temporary, not permanent. This is not poetic exaggeration. This is perspective warfare. Some of you grew up in environments where struggle was spiritualized, where lack was praised as humility, where abundance was treated as corruption. Psalms correct that imbalance. They show us a God who blesses and multiplies without apology. Poverty hates truth about God's nature. Another reason Psalms break poverty is because they confront injustice. Poverty often stays because something was stolen. Time, wages, dignity, opportunity. Psalms cry out for divine justice. They call God a righteous judge who defends the poor and breaks the arm of the oppressor. When you declare those psalms, you are not asking God to notice injustice. You are aligning as it. That alignment carries weight. Let me take you into something deeper now. Many people don't realize that certain psalms activate remembrance. Not God remembering you, but you remembering God correctly. Forgetting who God is leads to accepting conditions that were never meant to last. Psalm 78 speaks about people who forgot the works of God and limited the Holy One of Israel. Poverty loves spiritual amnesia. Psalms restore memory, and when memory returns, tolerance for lack decreases. This is why people who consistently declare psalms begin to feel uncomfortable staying in the same situation. They start feeling restless, not depressed, hungry, not hopeless, alert, not numb. That discomfort is not rebellion, it's awakening. Poverty survives where people feel powerless. Psalms reintroduce power language into the soul. They teach you how to speak to mountains, enemies, seasons, and even your own emotions. Listen. David spoke to his soul before he ever saw external change. Why are you cast down, O my soul? That is not self-talk. That is authority. Poverty collapses when internal authority is restored. Now let me address something practical but spiritual. Declaring psalms does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means removing resistance. When resistance lifts, effort produces results instead of exhaustion. That's the difference. Many people work hard under resistance. Psalms reduce resistance. This is why after seasons of declaration, people suddenly find clarity. They make better decisions. They walk away from traps. They recognize opportunities earlier. Favor doesn't always look like money. It often looks like timing. And timing changes everything. Poverty also feeds on shame. Shame about asking, shame about needing help, shame about wanting more. Psalms remove shame by reminding us that God delights in blessing his people and answering their cries. When Psalm 84 says no good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly, it challenges the idea that God is reluctant. Poverty thrives on the image of a reluctant God. Psalms reveal a willing one. This is why declaring psalms is dangerous to religious poverty mindsets. It exposes false humility and replaces it with covenant confidence. Some of you listening right now are realizing that poverty didn't just affect your wallet. It affected how you pray. It made your prayers small, careful, and apologetic. Psalms teach boldness without arrogance. They teach how to ask big while staying aligned. Now understand this. Poverty often intensifies right before it breaks. This is not coincidence. When systems of darkness sense exposure, they attempt intimidation. Psalms prepare you for that phase so you don't retreat. When David declared psalms, he was often surrounded by enemies. Yet his declarations didn't change his environment immediately. They changed his position within it. And position determines outcome. If you hold position long enough, outcome must follow. Lysis declaring psalms once inspires. Declaring them daily restructures. The soul begins to expect provision instead of bracing for disappointment. Expectation is a weapon. And here's the truth many don't want to hear. Poverty will test whether you really believe what you declare. Psalms spoken without belief are noise. Psalms spoken with conviction become commands. Belief doesn't mean emotion. It means decision. You decide to agree with God's word even when circumstances argue back. That decision weakens poverty's voice. As we move closer to the next part, I want you to understand this clearly. Declaring psalms is not about forcing God's hand. It's about positioning yourself under laws that already exist. God's word doesn't need permission to work. It needs agreement. And agreement is spoken. In the next part, I'm going to take you into the spiritual mechanics. Why certain psalms target lack directly, how declaration affects atmosphere, and what happens when a person becomes consistent enough that poverty can no longer recognize them. Stay with me. Shadow warfare doesn't stop at awareness. We go all the way to breakthrough. You need to understand this truth clearly. Poverty is territorial. It learns patterns. It recognizes cycles. It becomes familiar with people who repeat the same thoughts, prayers, fears, and expectations year after year. But when someone begins declaring psalms with understanding, something strange happens. Poverty starts failing to predict them, and whatever cannot predict you cannot control you. This is why consistency with psalms changes spiritual identity. You don't just speak words. You become unfamiliar to the system that once managed you. Your reactions change, your tolerance changes, your discernment sharpens. Poverty thrives on predictability. Psalms introduce divine unpredictability. Let me explain this carefully. When a person lives under lack for a long time, their responses become automatic. Fear when money is mentioned, anxiety when opportunity appears, suspicion when help comes. Psalms interrupt these reflexes. They retrain the nervous system of the soul. When Psalm 91 is declared, it doesn't only speak protection from danger. It restores a sense of safety, and safety is essential for growth. People trapped in poverty often live in constant internal threat mode. Psalms calm that internal chaos. Calm is not weakness. Calm is control. Poverty wants you reactive. Psalms make you responsive. Now listen closely. There is a reason psalms are filled with repetition. God is not forgetful, humans are. Repetition is not for God's memory, it's for ours. Declaring psalms repeatedly rewrites internal scripts that poverty has been narrating for years. Every time you declare, "The Lord is my helper, I will not fear," you are interrupting a fear loop. Every time you declare, "I have not seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread," you are confronting generational expectation. And expectation is where poverty hides best. Poverty survives by convincing people that struggle is their destiny. Psalms dismantle destiny lies by revealing covenant truth. They say, "This is not fate. This is not final. This is not yours to keep." Now let's talk about atmosphere, because poverty does not live in isolation. It lives in atmospheres of heaviness, discouragement, and resignation. Psalms change atmosphere because sound carries presence. Silence allows atmospheres to settle. Declaration disrupts them. This is why worship has always preceded victory. This is why psalms were sung before battles. When psalms are declared, the atmosphere becomes hostile to lack. Ideas begin to flow. Conversations shift. Favor shows up through people you didn't expect. Atmosphere decides what can survive. Poverty cannot survive long in an atmosphere saturated with truth, gratitude, and authority. Psalms produce all three. Now hear this. Declaring psalms does not mean ignoring pain. Psalms include pain. They include complaint. They include tears. But they never end in surrender. They always circle back to trust. That structure teaches the circle without submitting to it. This is why psalms are dangerous to depression-linked poverty cycles. They allow expression without agreement. You can cry without conceding. You can grieve without giving up ground. Some of you were taught that strong faith means pretending everything is fine. Psalms teach something better: honest faith that still declares victory. Poverty loses power when honesty meets authority. Let me take you deeper still. Certain psalms don't just speak blessing, they speak reversal. They speak restoration of years lost, opportunities missed, and strength drained. Poverty often leaves people feeling behind. Psalms correct time distortion. When Psalm 126 speaks of restoration like streams in the desert, it reminds the soul that recovery can be sudden. That joy can return quickly. That lost ground can be regained. This is crucial, because hopelessness about time is one of poverty's strongest weapons. Psalms restore hope by showing that God is not limited by chronology. Now let's address resistance again. When you begin declaring Psalms seriously, distractions increase. Fatigue shows up. Doubt whispers. Old habits attempt to return. This is not coincidence. It's resistance testing your resolve. Poverty wants to know if you're serious. Consistency answers that question. The moment Psalms stop being an emotional response and become a discipline, authority increases. Discipline terrifies poverty because it signals permanence. Temporary faith produces temporary relief. Sustained delays in structural change, and structural change is what breaks generational cycles. Now listen to this truth carefully. Declaring Psalms aligns you with order. Poverty is chaotic by nature. It thrives in disorder, financial, emotional, spiritual. Psalms restore order by re-centering life around truth instead of crisis. When Psalm 37 says, "Trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness," it's teaching senility. Stability is wealth's foundation. Psalms don't just promise blessing, they teach posture. Posture determines longevity. This is why some people experience quick breakthroughs and lose them. Psalms prepare you to sustain what comes. They build character alongside provision. Now let me speak directly to someone listening who feels tired. You've tried before. You've hoped before. You've been disappointed before. Poverty trained you to protect yourself by lowering expectation. Psalms gently raise expectation without pressure. They don't say, "Try harder." They say, "Remember who God is." And remembering restores strength. Here's something most people never realize. Declaring Psalms doesn't only affect you. It affects what can attach to you. Certain opportunities, people, and ideas are attracted to environments of faith and clarity. Psalms create that environment. You become a safe place for provision to land. Poverty often leaves when a person becomes a safe carrier of increase. Safety comes from humility, wisdom, and alignment. Psalms cultivate all three. As we move toward the final part, understand this. Declaring Psalms is not a ritual. It's a relationship expressed through sound. It's trusting God enough to let His words shape your reality. And reality always bends toward the strongest voice. In the next and final part, we will close this with a powerful declaration, a call to action, and a spiritual sealing. Because awareness without action changes nothing. Stay here. Shadow Warefare finishes what it starts. Everything you had is not information meant to impress you. It is truth meant to position you. Knowledge alone does not break poverty. Alignment does. And alignment is proven through action, consistency, and voice. Right now, I want you to understand something deeply. Poverty does not leave because it feels threatened. It leaves when it loses permission. And permission is withdrawn when you stop agreeing with it, internally and verbally. Psalms help you do exactly that. They retrain your agreement. Many people wait for circumstances to change before they change how they speak. Psalms reverse that order. They teach you to speak first, stand firm, and let circumstances catch up. This is why I want to be very clear. Declaring Psalms is not about chasing money. It's about restoring order. And when order is restored, provision follows naturally. Money flows where wisdom, peace, and clarity already exist. Now listen carefully. Some of you have been blaming yourselves for years. You thought something was wrong with you. But the truth is, you were fighting a system without the right weapons. Psalms are weapons, not emotional ones, legal ones. And today, you are no longer ignorant of that. If poverty has resisted you, it's because you've been resisting it silently. Silence is not humility. Silence is surrender. And today surrender ends. I want you to understand this next part deeply. Breakthrough does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it begins as a shift in confidence, a calm assurance, a quiet boldness, a refusal to panic. Do not despise those early signs. They are proof that Psalms are working. The moment fear loses its grip on your voice, Poverty has already begun to lose ground. Now hear me. You don't need to declare every psalm. You need to declare the ones that speak to identity for a restoration. And you need to do it consistently. Not for one day, not for 1 week, but until your inner world agrees fully with God's truth. Consistency is what turns declaration into authority. From today forward, I want you to stop saying, "I hope things change," and start saying, "I am aligning myself with what God has already declared." Hope waits, alignment moves. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not cursed. You are awakening, and awakening always disrupts old systems. Now I'm going to speak directly to you, not as a speaker, but as a voice in this spiritual war. Do not treat this message as content. Treat it as a turning point. If you return to silence tomorrow, nothing changes. But if you return to declaration, everything begins to shift. Start simple. Speak psalms out loud in the morning. Speak them when fear tries to rise. Speak them when bills shout louder than faith. Speak them until your soul responds automatically with truth instead of panic. This is how cycles break, and now comes the moment of decision. If this message spoke to you, even a little, that means something in you is ready to rise. Don't ignore that signal. Don't scroll past it. Don't bury it under routine. I want you to take action right now. If you are ready to break agreement with poverty, type in the comments, "I choose covenant over lack." Not for me, for you. Words spoken publicly strengthen internal commitment. If this message gave you clarity, strength, or confirmation, like this video so it reaches others trapped in silence. Someone else is waiting for the same awakening you just experienced. Subscribe to Shadow Warefare if you are serious about confronting spiritual systems, not just managing symptoms. This channel is not for casual listeners. It's for those who are ready to fight intelligently and stand firmly. And finally, share this message with someone who feels stuck, ashamed, or exhausted. Sometimes breakthrough enters a life through a voice before it enters through provision. Remember this truth and carry it with you. Poverty is not your identity. It is a condition, and conditions can change. But identity must be claimed. Declare who you are. Declare what God has spoken. Declare until silence breaks. This is Shadow Warefare, and this battle is not over. It's just begun.